The aroma was unmistakable, a sweet, tangy cloud of real strawberry, mango, and passion fruit that clung to the air of the cramped San Francisco apartment. This was Candy Yuen's laboratory. By day, she was a quiet, meticulous food chemist for a mid-level snack company, running stability tests on other people's creations. But by night, the small kitchen transformed. Pots simmered with pectin and natural juices. Precise digital scales measured grams of vitamin C and calcium citrate. Candy's dream, born from watching her niece refuse anything that looked vaguely healthy, was simple but revolutionary. A candy that was genuinely good for you. Not a compromise, but a delight. After 3 years of failed batches, gummy disasters, and sleepless nights, she finally held a perfect, jewel-toned cube in her hand. It was soft but firm, bursting with real fruit flavor, and packed with a full day's worth of key vitamins for a child. She called them Sunshine Bites. The first test was her niece, a notoriously picky 5-year-old. The little girl's eyes widened after popping one in her mouth, and she immediately reached for another. That was the moment Candy knew she had something special. She spent her entire life savings, $8 for 27, to file a provisional patent, a protective shield for her recipe. She bought ingredients in bulk, rented a commercial kitchen for a weekend, and produced her first official batch of 500 bags. With trembling hands, she set up a small, brightly colored booth at the Ferry Plaza Farmers Market. The sun was shining, the Bay Bridge looming in the background. Candy held her breath as the first customer, a health-conscious mother, sampled a cube. Her expression shifted from skepticism to pure surprise. She bought 3 bags. Then another customer came, and another. By noon, Candy had sold out. People asked where they could buy more. They took her business card, a simple thing she'd printed at home. For the first time, the dream felt solid, real, and possible. She was not just a chemist in a lab coat. She was an inventor, an entrepreneur. The local newspaper even did a small feature on her, dubbing her the Vitamin Candy Queen. The article caught the eye of a junior scout for a massive food and beverage conglomerate. A week later, a sleek, professional email landed in Candy's inbox. It was from the office of Leo Cheung, the visionary son of billionaire Victor Cheung of the Golden Horizon Group. They were, the email stated, profoundly impressed by her innovation and requested a meeting to discuss a potential partnership. Candy read the email a dozen times, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and terror. This was the break she had prayed for. The path from her tiny kitchen to supermarket shelves across America suddenly seemed to have a golden gate, and it had the name Cheung etched on its arch. She spent the next week preparing, perfecting her pitch, and selecting her best batches of Sunshine Bites to bring with her. She walked into that meeting with hope shining in her eyes, utterly unaware that she was not walking into an opportunity, but into a perfectly polished, gilded trap. The offices of the Golden Horizon Group occupied the top floors of a shimmering San Francisco skyscraper, a world of silent elevators, panoramic bay views, and thick carpet that swallowed sound. Candy Yuen, clutching her binder of formulas and a carefully arranged gift box of Sunshine Bites, felt a profound disconnect from her own sticky-floored kitchen. She was led not to a sterile conference room, but to a luxurious lounge. Leo Cheung greeted her not with a handshake, but with a warm, disarming smile. He was younger than she expected, dressed in casual, expensive clothes, and spoke with an enthusiasm that felt genuine. He raved about her farmer's market success, quoted lines from a local article, and sampled a gummy with a theatrical flourish of delight. This, he declared, is the future. Not just a snack, but a genuine force for good. He spoke of his father, Victor, the formidable patriarch, as a man of old-world tactics. Leo presented himself as the new guard, wanting to uplift true innovators, not exploit them. His vision was a partnership, a joint venture. Golden Horizon would provide the fortress, the capital for a dedicated factory line, the relationships with national distributors, the marketing muscle of a billion-dollar brand. Candy, in return, would be the heart of it all. She would retain full ownership of her original patent. She would hold the title of Chief Innovation Officer, leading a small, dedicated research team to expand the Sunshine Bites line. They showed her glossy mock-ups of packaging with her name and story featured prominently. It was a fairy tale written just for her. The contract arrived 2 days later, a bound document thicker than any cookbook she owned. The key terms, outlined in a cover letter from Leo himself, repeated the promises: patent retention, leadership role, a generous salary, and a share of the profits. The legal language in the body was dense, a labyrinth of heretofores, and party of the first parts. Her own lawyer, a kind-faced general practitioner who mostly handled wills, skimmed it and saw the bolded, favorable terms. He missed the subtler clauses nested in the later pages, the definitions of company improvements, the arbitration mandates, the intellectual property assignment linked to any development utilizing company resources. The legal fees for a deeper review were more than Candy had. Trusting the smiling face of Leo and the dream he sold, she signed. She celebrated with her family, who toasted to her incredible success. The first few months were a whirlwind. She was given a shiny new lab at a Golden Horizon facility. Her team was assembled, and she was flown to New York for a press announcement. Leo would pop in, full of encouraging words. But slowly, the meetings about production scalability began. Engineers presented cost analyses, showing how her expensive fruit concentrates and vitamin blends could be optimized. Candy's objections were met with patient, condescending smiles. Her role was shifting from inventor to consultant. Then, the emails from Leo began to go unanswered for days. The silence, when it descended, was colder and more frightening than any argument. The gilded cage, she realized too late, had locked from the outside. A cold feeling, one that had nothing to do with the sterile, climate-controlled air of her company lab, began to settle in Candy's stomach. It started with the samples. The first production test batch of Sunshine Bites arrived on her desk. They looked identical, shiny and colorful in their professional wrapper. But when she tasted one, her world tilted. The bright, nuanced burst of real mango was gone, replaced by a flat, cloying sweetness. The texture was tougher, a rubbery chew that stuck to the teeth. She rushed to the ingredient list on the packaging mock-up. Her heart sank. Her expensive fruit concentrates were replaced by natural flavors and fruit juice from concentrate. The vitamin blend was cut in half, substituted with cheaper, less bioavailable alternatives. This was not her candy. This was a hollow, sugary ghost of it. She stormed into a product development meeting, the sample bag clutched in her hand. The room, full of unfamiliar faces from the logistics and finance departments, went quiet. She laid out her case, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and panic. This change violated the very soul of her product. The nutrition was gutted. The head of production, a man she'd never met, gave a weary sigh. He explained the reality of mass-market price points and shelf stability. Her original formula, he stated calmly, was not financially viable. Before Candy could protest, the head of legal, a woman with an immaculate suit and an expressionless face, slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a clause from her contract, highlighted in yellow. It granted Golden Horizon final discretionary authority over all production and formulation decisions for commercial viability. Candy's title, it seemed, was just that, a title. She had no real power. That night, plagued by insomnia, she did the one thing she'd avoided. She began a deep, paranoid dive into the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office database. She pulled up her own patent number, the one she was promised she retained. The document loaded. For a moment, everything looked normal. Then her eyes caught it. Listed under assignee, the official owner of the patent, was not her name. It was a string of letters. GHC Innovations LLC. A frantic search revealed it was a subsidiary wholly owned by the Golden Horizon Group. Her breath hitched. She cross-referenced the patent number with a new filing made just 3 months prior. It was a refinement patent for a nutrient-dense confectionery delivery system. The language was deliberately obtuse, but the core chemistry, the specific binding of vitamins to the pectin matrix, was undeniably, unmistakably hers. The inventors listed were L. Cheung and V. Cheung. Her name was nowhere to be found. They hadn't just hijacked her production. In the eyes of the law, they had quietly, surgically, erased her from her own invention's history. The paperwork was a knife, and they had slid it between her ribs without a sound. The joint venture was a sham. She wasn't a partner. She was a resource that had been fully mined and was now being discarded. The fight, she knew with a chilling certainty, was only just beginning, and she was already miles behind. The decision to fight was not a moment of fiery passion, but a slow, cold crystallization of resolve. Candy scraped together funds from maxed-out credit cards and hired a new attorney, a litigator named Martin Cross, who specialized in intellectual property theft. His office was a stark contrast to Golden Horizon's opulence, filled with stacks of paper and a persistent smell of stale coffee. He listened carefully, his expression growing graver as she laid out the contract, the altered formula, and the patent reassignment. "They've done this before," he said quietly, not to her, but to the case file he was already building in his mind. He warned her it would be a war of attrition, that the Cheungs had bottomless pockets and legal strategies designed to exhaust, not to engage. Candy, however, had one weapon they didn't fully appreciate: her voice. Against Martin's initial advice, she agreed to a single interview with a respected but small-scale investigative business journalist. She sat in a modest studio, no makeup, her hands clasped tightly on the table. She didn't shout or cry. She spoke with the precise, devastating clarity of a scientist presenting evidence. She explained the formula, the theft of the patent, the betrayal of the product's health mission. She held up a bag of the factory-made Sunshine Bites next to one of her original batches. "This," she said, her voice cracking only once, "is no longer my dream. It's their counterfeit." The story went live at 8 a.m. By noon, it had been picked up by several major financial blogs. Candy felt a flicker of hope. Public pressure, she thought, could force a settlement, an apology, anything. The Cheung's response was not a legal document. It was a media blitz. By 3 p.m., a slickly produced corporate response video was released. Leo Cheung appeared, not in a boardroom, but in what looked like a cozy library. He spoke with sorrowful gravity, expressing his deep disappointment over Candy's misguided statements. He never called her a liar directly. Instead, he used phrases like the unfortunate revision of memory under stress and the difficulty some inventors face in the transition from a creative to a corporate environment. It was a masterclass in character assassination disguised as concern. Then, the anonymous sources began to speak. A Business Insider article quoted former colleagues who described Candy as paranoid and impossible to collaborate with. Leaked excerpts from internal project emails, carefully edited, showed her questioning cost-cutting measures, framed as erratic rants against the management team. The narrative flipped with breathtaking speed. She was no longer a wronged inventor. She was a fragile, unstable genius who couldn't handle the big leagues. Her great idea saved from ruin by the benevolent stewardship of Golden Horizon. The comments under the original interview turned toxic. People called her greedy, a sore loser, mentally ill. The hope that had flickered in her chest was smothered not by a legal defeat, but by a tidal wave of humiliation, expertly engineered from the very top. They weren't just beating her in court. They were erasing her credibility, her dignity, her very sanity in the public square. The silence that followed the media storm was the most punishing chapter. Martin Cross, her lawyer, continued to file motions, but each one was met with a wall of procedural delays from the Cheung's legal legion. Every month a new, daunting invoice arrived, bleeding her dry. The joint venture's salary had been suspended, citing her public disparagement of the company. Her savings were gone, consumed by legal fees and living expenses. The final blow was the bank's notice. With her income evaporated and her debt soaring, she could no longer afford the mortgage on her small, beloved San Francisco apartment. The place that had smelled of sugar and dreams was sold in a hurried, depressing transaction. She packed her life into a dozen boxes and moved into a single, sunless room in a shared house in a distant, quieter suburb. Her new commute to her lawyer's office was an hour-long bus ride. Her name was now poison in the industry. Resumes sent to other food science companies went unanswered or were met with polite, swift rejections. She was the Candy Yuen, the one from the messy, public scandal. The Cheungs, meanwhile, were thriving. They launched 2 products. First, the cheapened version of Sunshine Bites hit discount store shelves, a colorful, sugary product that bore no resemblance to her original vision. Then, the true cruelty landed. A year to the day after her interview, Golden Horizon unveiled its new premium health brand, Aura Wellness. Their flagship product, Aura Fruit Gels. They were a direct, high-end copy of Candy's original, nutrient-dense formula. The packaging was minimalist, elegant, and expensive. The marketing touted patented nutrient lock technology and clinical-grade vitamins. The patent number listed was the one they had stolen from her. They had taken her creation, made a bastardized version to crush her spirit and flood the market, and were now selling her actual genius back to the wealthy at a massive profit. The reviews raved about the sophisticated taste and clean energy. It was the ultimate victory lap. Candy saw an ad for them on a bus shelter. She stood there for a long time, the city noise fading into a dull roar. The fight had left her. The anger had burned down to a cold, dead ash. The lawsuits would drag on for years, a financial leech ensuring she could never recover. She was a ghost in her own life, a cautionary tale whispered in food industry circles. She stopped returning Martin's calls. She let the legal process die, a form of surrender that felt like the only way to stop the bleeding. She took a cashier job at a large supermarket, the very kind that now stocked both the fake Sunshine Bites and the luxurious Aura Gels. Every shift was a quiet hell. She would watch parents toss the cheap version into their carts, or affluent millennials select the expensive Aura box, and she would say nothing. The woman who had invented a future was now silently scanning its corrupted, stolen legacy, one barcode at a time. The Cheungs had not just taken her invention or her money. They had taken her future, her past, and her name, leaving behind a hollowed-out shell where a brilliant, hopeful person used to be. For over a year, the world heard nothing from Candy Yuen. The Cheung case faded from headlines, another story of corporate predation, swallowed by the news cycle. Victor and Leo Cheung were ascendant, celebrated in business magazines for their visionary Aura Wellness line. Their public persona was one of polished philanthropy and ruthless business acumen. In her quiet anonymity, Candy's despair did not curdle into bitterness, but into a different, more patient substance, resolve. She used her employee discount at the supermarket to buy a cheap, refurbished laptop. On her days off, she disappeared into the back corner of the public library, a hoodie drawn over her head. She was not studying food chemistry anymore. She was studying something new: cybersecurity, digital forensics, and the intricate pathways of corporate data architecture. Her target was not the main Golden Horizon servers, which were fortresses. Instead, she focused on the human element. She remembered Leo's vanity, his need to be seen as the tech-savvy futurist. She began constructing a digital phantom, a fake online persona, as a freelance journalist, writing a flattering piece on next-gen data security for family empires. Using a series of sophisticated phishing emails tailored to his ego, she tricked his assistant into opening a link. It wasn't a virus, but a simple, invisible tracker that logged keystrokes on that particular machine. For months, she watched and learned. She saw the passwords for Leo's private cloud drive, a ruthless, encrypted but personal storage he used for sensitive family business, separate from the company's official systems. He believed it was secure. It was his fatal mistake. One night, from the library computer, she executed her plan. Using the stolen credentials, she infiltrated this private digital vault. What she found was breathtaking in its scope and audacity. It wasn't just about her. There were folders detailing identical schemes against a small electric car battery inventor, a software developer for agricultural drones, a woman who had created a revolutionary water purification straw. Each folder contained the same blueprint: the enticing contract, the plans for patent theft, the strategy for character assassination. There were spreadsheets tracking secret payments to the anonymous sources who had smeared her and the others. Most damningly, there were recorded phone conversations between Victor and Leo discussing the need to bury the Yuen girl psychologically, and bribes to a court clerk to delay her cases. Candy didn't take a single file. She copied everything. She then spent weeks packaging the data, creating a clear, undeniable digital timeline of criminal conspiracy. Using advanced anonymizing software, she uploaded the entire trove to multiple secure servers and set a delayed, automated delivery. On a quiet Tuesday morning, encrypted data packets simultaneously arrived at the inboxes of the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Wall Street Journal, and her old lawyer, Martin Cross. The source was untraceable, tagged only with the label, "For Sunshine." The fallout was instantaneous and catastrophic for the Cheungs. Federal agents swarmed their offices. The story exploded, now framed not as a he said, she said dispute, but as a vast, criminal enterprise. The narrative permanently flipped. As Victor and Leo were led away in handcuffs, their empire crumbling, the world wondered who had brought them down. The final shot anyone had of Candy Yuen was from a grainy library security tape released online by an anonymous source. It showed a woman in a hoodie leaving the building, her face turned away from the camera. She paused at a trash can, and with a calm, deliberate motion, dropped a single, handmade gummy into the bin. She didn't look back. She simply walked away, disappearing into the city, finally free.